Hey guys, I'm Alain.
And I'm David, and welcome to our podcast, I Finally Watched, where we talk about movies that at least one of us has never seen before.
We discuss our thoughts on the film and determine, was it worth the wait?
Does it still hold up, and would we watch it again?
And for our first episode, I finally watched Ex Machina.
All right, Ex Machina centers around Caleb Smith, a programmer at a huge internet company. He wins a contest that enables him to spend a week at the private estate of Nathan Bateman, his firm's brilliant CEO. When he arrives, Caleb learns that he has been chosen to be the human component in a Turing test to determine the capabilities and consciousness of an AI named Ava.
And I really, really like this movie, like way more than I thought I would.
What were your thoughts going into it?
Well, I mean, it's kind of like my thoughts when the movie first came out back in like 2015, 2016 was that I didn't really care. I think one thing that led me like away from the movie was uh my girlfriend and I like heard of it, and we both thought like, oh, it's just like kind of one of those like overhyped sci-fi movies that only douchebags go to see. I don't know. It's just it didn't like really spark our interest. I mean, I went to see like three of the other big Oscar movies that year. I think one of them was The Big Short, and Spotlight. There we go. And that this one just kind of didn't interest me.
Yeah, I think when I first found out about this movie, at least to me from what I knew about it, there's just a lot of mystery surrounding what it was about. Obviously, there's a robot in it, but just how the movie develops that story is not something I really was aware of until I just watched it. And then, I was blown away by it. Just the overall feel of the movie, the way it's structured. And I think this is one of those movies too where it's kind of all about the ending. I think the whole movie is sort of playing out for that payoff at the end of it.
Right.
And I think when the movie ends, it's one of those movies that if you're seeing with other people, you kind of you don't really talk for a few minutes. Just kind of like it sinks in, and you're just kind of like blown away by it, and which is what happened to me.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely blew me away. I mean, not just the ending, although the ending is really great, but everything from the acting to the production design to the cinematography. I thought everything was done really well and with a lot of care.
Yeah, I think all those things you mentioned, they kind of create the mood of the movie, just like from the lighting, and it's kind of it's a mostly very darkly shot movie. Mostly takes place inside, and so yeah, the way it's kind of, you have this foreboding, which is kind of what I was talking about, because it's always leading towards the ending, at least for me. And I think the way it's shot and the way it's lit is, you always have this sense of like, oh man, what's happening? How is this going to play out?
Yeah, no, and what you were saying about the lighting was especially interesting to me because it didn't have that normal fluorescent feel that most sci-fis do. It was done in such a special way that they installed like some ridiculous number of tungsten bulbs, like many little tungsten bulbs, to replace all the fluorescent lighting. So it purposely doesn't feel like a sci-fi movie. So you do get that kind of warmer feel, that more natural feel. And I feel like for this whole movie plays a part. I know in the movie somewhere it says between the simulation versus the actual. And for this movie, I think to everything from the plot base to the lighting to the cinematography was not just simulation versus the actual, but it was nature versus machine. And I felt that throughout the whole movie.
Well, yeah, especially like the way it was shot too. If you notice, when they're outside, it's kind of a normal. It looks much more like a normal movie, and they're not outside that much. But in the beginning, when Caleb's flying, he's taking a helicopter to Nathan's estate. It just looks like a very normal picture. And then for the rest of most of the rest of the movie, when they're inside, yeah, that lighting that I was talking about, it just sets a mood, and I think it worked really well. The other thing I really noticed was the structure of the movie. There, there's the basic plot as we went over. Caleb is there to give a Turing test to Ava to see if she has human consciousness, and the structure of the movie, they set it up where they divide out each of the sessions where Caleb is communicating with Ava and trying to test her in different ways to see if she's human, basically. And the way they structured that with the dividing it out that way is just is I it kind of coincides with Caleb's really methodical approach to everything. Every time Nathan asks him a question, he's very careful and very well thought out, and so the structure really coincides with the protagonist, who is Caleb, and I like that the similarity there.
Yeah, I really liked how they built Caleb to be a lot like us as the audience, who comes into this space that they're unaware of what they're getting into, and they expect the way things that like we expect it to turn out. I think the movie really sets up Nathan, the big genius CEO of this company. This movie really sets him up to be this kind of wild card villain. He is kind of off the cuff sort of guy who, just doesn't think the way you would think a super genius would think. Caleb, like you said, thinking very methodical and very careful, is the way you would think that a genius tech company CEO would act. But Nathan is
Right.
way more loosey goosey, I guess.
Yeah, I think that exemplified by the dance scene in the middle of the movie. That kind of reminiscent of like a Pulp Fiction type thing, where it's, I wouldn't say out of place, but it just comes out of nowhere, and
It's definitely jarring. It's definitely jarring.
I mean, he had some good moves. I can't deny that, but yeah, it's just out of nowhere, and I think it's just sort of to show that character that it's almost it's sort of the other side of the coin, because he shows you his brilliance in describing how he created Ava, and there's a whole scene where he goes into that and explains to Caleb the process and what he did. He takes him into the lab, but just the other side of that, where you're seeing him get drunk all the time. He talks about the ability of the robots to have sex if they can.
Well, you get that he's a really lonely guy. I think you get a sense that they both are really lonely, and that they've basically built these mechanical women to do whatever they want.
And I guess this is a good time to start maybe getting into the plot, which if you haven't seen if you haven't seen this movie, then this would be the time that things might get spoiled for you.
Yeah, move forward with caution.
But I think the one thing I wanted to ask, Kyoko, his assistant, at any point did you have any inkling that she wasn't human?
Almost right away. It's it's odd because I thought it was so obvious that they were going to address it immediately, and the fact that they didn't, and I was like, okay, well, maybe she's not. And then as the story goes and as you saw more of her, I was like, well, someone that we don't know is a robot is definitely a robot.
Right. Well, and I may be more gullible when I watch movies and sort of, I don't know that I'm ever trying to figure out what's going on. I just watch it and accept what people give me. So I guess I'm a perfect audience for a movie with twists, but it's not something I guess I saw happening. But I think once it does happen, if it is something you missed, you're like, ah, well, obviously, how would I not know that? That makes perfect sense.
Right. Well, when the power outages happen and you don't know why, and Caleb doesn't know why, and then you find out that Ava was causing it, you can tell if you like keep a really close eye on her hand throughout the movie, because in all the beginning parts where there are power outages, either through the security camera or when he's standing on the other side of the glass with her, you see her hand going on the power uh, panels, shorting them out.
Right.
You don't quite like make the connection right away because you don't know. Um, but I think the movie's foreshadowing in that sense was really well done. You know, you were saying that you're really gullible when watching movies,
Yeah, that's a
and
good qualifier when watching movies.
yeah, and you know, I think this movie actually preys on people's gullibility, and manipulates you in a sort of way, because when you do see Nathan, the music changes, the lighting changes, you get this very eerie feeling when his character comes on screen, and it's set up for you to think, okay, he's the bad guy, he might be playing it cool, he might, you know, throw an F-bomb here and there, but there's something off about him and you don't know when he's going to blow his top.
Yeah,
And
and what's
then
go
and
ahead.
then the movie, I think you're about to say it, but then the movie just flips you.
Well, no, what I was going to say is that they play with you like that, and then they have Nathan come out and say, "I'm on your side. Ava's playing you. I'm trying to help you out," and you're just like, "Nah, I don't believe you. That's no." All the evidence I've seen before this has shown that you're not to be trusted, and maybe it creates a little doubt in the audience, but you're like, no, you're clearly a bad guy. You're locking these people up, these robots that have a consciousness and have a humanity, so you can't be anything but the evil villain of this movie.
I think the story does well where, for people who haven't seen it yet and for the people who have, these robots are vulnerable. They're built to be vulnerable women. And Caleb falls in love with Ava. Um, the the whole reason you do not take the robot's side is, one, because you have a human who is also on her side to help convince the audience that, you know, you should be on her side. And also, you clearly see Nathan in a sexual deviant light when it comes to these robots. So everything, the plot, the lighting, the music, the storytelling, really pushes you to really hate Nathan.
And I can't remember exactly which comes first, but very close in proximity, you see one, Nathan have sex with Kyoko, and two, Kyoko is confirmed to be a robot. And so those two things kind of line up with what you're saying, that he's and he goes into great detail about the ability for the robots to feel pleasure. You know, there's a whole conversation with Caleb about the sexuality of the robots. And so it's just it's just further where he's like, where Nathan's like, I mean, sexuality is fun. Why would I not give them a sex? You know what I mean? Why?
Right.
And goes unsaid, why would I not make them women?
Right. Well, to the point even where Caleb thinks that he has programmed Ava to be attracted to him, to fall in love with him. And there's like an underlying plot where, and I want your opinion on this too, because this is how I took it. Maybe this is not how you took it when you saw it. But one of the robots in one of the recordings he has is, and I forget, it might have even been Ava. I think it was Ava. Says, "How does it feel to have built something that hates you so much?" And it puts an idea in my mind that did he purposely build the AI to hate him to try to escape and use Caleb as a means of escape? Or is that just between a after, months or years of sexually abusing these robots, they grow an awareness to hate their abuser? Did he build them that way, or did they grow to hate him that way?
Well, I don't know. And I guess you could think of it too as him sexually abuse them. I don't know that we know that he sleeps with any of them but Kyoko. And Kyoko has a lot more freedom to roam the house. Obviously, she can't leave probably. It doesn't seem like, it seemed like Caleb would even have trouble leaving possibly. I mean, I think his key, they had key cards to control the house. I think that would let him out. Um, but I
Well,
think,
I always thought, sorry to interrupt, but I always thought Kyoko was built on a lower brain level than, say, Ava.
yeah, she was almost like a sex bot.
Right, exactly.
She cleaned, she cooked, and then she had sex with him. There's that scene where she starts taking, Caleb is just speaking to her, and she starts taking her shirt off, almost like, well, it's that time of the day, and this guy's talking to me, so this is probably what's, yeah. So that totally makes sense.
And I don't mean that all the abuse comes from sexuality. I mean, Kyoko spills some wine on Caleb accidentally, which I also found odd that a robot would do anything accidentally, right?
Yeah,
But
they shouldn't make. I mean, I guess that's bad. Really, I guess Nathan's just pissed at himself because he designed a robot that can make mistakes.
but when she did spill the wine on him, he just grilled into her. He yelled at her. I mean, if Caleb wasn't there, it wouldn't surprise me that he would hit the robot. If they could even feel pain, I don't know. But he locks them up behind glass for all their lives, as we learn from Ava's experience.
Yeah,
And when he does go in there, he tears up the picture that she drew. So there's a
yeah.
lot more abuse than just sexual.
I mean, yeah. And to answer your overall question, I don't think he designed them to hate him. I mean, for as far as we know, he wasn't bringing in anyone until he got to Ava. I think the models beforehand that he had created were probably just, he knew he had to make changes to it before he could determine if they had consciousness, if they were actual AI. But I think it was just he created things that, I mean, it's an argument for the end of the movie that we can talk about soon after this to get to the end of the movie. But if they do have humanity, you've basically created something and then put it in a cage. And so obviously they're going to want to be free. Ava has all this knowledge about the outside world, and she wants to pursue leaving, and he won't allow it. I think that's where the hate comes from.
Right. And but see, that's what makes me think that he did it on purpose to build up this hate, to build up their desire to leave. And that's really where we learn the Turing test goes, is that Ava has to use Caleb and manipulate him in a way to escape. And that is like the true meaning of the Turing test, um, that we find out. So that's why I think the hate is built in on purpose, but that's just how I took it.
Well, and maybe yeah, I don't, I guess it's fun. It's like a nature versus nurture. Did he build her hardware or the software inputs to make her hate him, or did he do things, he's a normal a-hole, like ripping up the picture that made her hate him?
Right.
I would guess more of the latter, where he just, like ripping up the picture. Those are the things that made her hate him.
Would you say that his ego is his eventual downfall?
Um, Yeah, and this is getting right into the ending, but so when Ava, attacks him, she gets on top of him and sort of is overpowering him, which I'm wondering, she's overpowering him, but he's able to get her off, and then he's able to break her arm off, and then he's able to drag her. So to me, he didn't design her as a very strong robot. But what I think leads me to like kind of agree with your point that he thought of himself that way and had this great ego is he never considered that Kyoko would turn on him. And it's almost like he had developed in his weird sick mind, he had developed kind of feelings for her because she's behind him. It's this robot who was just talking to Ava, and he doesn't even pay attention to her. And then as he's dragging Ava, she just sticks a knife in him, which is the way the knife goes into him is also something I noticed is very odd. Um, I don't, I don't know if they're. I think it can create some sort of conspiracy theories around the movie that Nathan was a robot. That's not something I'm necessarily thinking, but
He bled way too much to be a robot.
well, he could have designed it very well. I
I
guess you're
don't
right.
think he was
I
a
said I
robot.
didn't
I
buy
think
into it.
okay. Well, I thought the way the knife went in was very odd. I took it that robots didn't have the hesitation we humans did, and they have at least the mechanical, not strength, but the mechanical um, force to just push something right through something. And I think his ego blinded him of actually how powerful they are, and I found that to be really really interesting. As far as not only did he, because I disagree with you. I don't think he had feelings for Kyoko. I think he underestimated her so much he didn't even think about her.
Well, no,
Just like
that's what I was saying. But I do also the way he looked at her when she stabbed him, it could have been a look of I can't even believe you would have done this, but it almost could have been a look of hurt too, like
yeah,
Kyoko, how could
yeah.
et tu Kyoko, how could you do this to me?
The thing though is he underestimates her, but I think the bigger thing is he underestimates Caleb for outsmarting him. Basically, he manipulates a camera inside the interview room and overhears Caleb's plan to let Ava escape. And he stops that plan, or at least so he thinks. But then the plan that Caleb said he would enact that day was actually enacted the day before. And I think Nathan just did not expect Caleb to outsmart him.
Well, yeah, and he didn't necessarily have enough evidence to think that Caleb had turned that way. Although Caleb acted so weird about Ava, after the first couple interviews that you would think he would, there were several of the blackouts, and Nathan would ask Caleb like, "Well, what'd you guys talk about?" He's like, "Oh, nothing." It's like, "Well, you obviously didn't talk about nothing," and so the fact that he was evasive, I mean, it led him to putting in the cameras, but you almost wonder if it should have led him to be even more careful than that.
I will say you're talking about the dinner scene in the same scene in which Kyoko spills the wine. I really really love how that scene was shot and edited. I thought that was a really great scene at on a cinematic point of view.
Now back to the ending. I think there's from the ending. Obviously, it's very beautiful. It's haunting, very chilling. But I think there's a couple questions that come out of that. Um, One, the more just if you really bought into the movie and are really affected by it, does Caleb die? But then also that does Ava have humanity? Did this movie prove that she had humanity? Um, and did she? And as a part of that, did she care about what happened to Caleb?
The thing that intrigues me most is, since we are talking about the ending, she manipulated the absolute hell out of him.
Right.
And on the same point, to push Caleb to that point, Nathan also manipulated the hell out of him.
Yeah, and so I think you could almost make the argument that she did show humanity, but that she's a psychopath in that she showed the ability to manipulate, to lie, um, but then
to,
she
to
showed,
fabricate to fabricate those feelings.
but then she showed, well, yeah, you could say the fabrication, but then showed no emotion. I thought what I found interesting about the ending is she asks Caleb to stay there, which I think is her just wanting the moment of kind of putting her human body together by herself. She didn't want him to be a part of it.
Yeah, when she was like, "Will you stay here?" I wondered, did she mean in this room or did she mean in this house?
What I took it as is this was kind of her moment to put on her skin, um, to kind of create herself the way she wanted to look, and she has like a long look at her body, and then she chooses the dress she's going to wear. But what I find interesting afterwards is when she walks out with no hurry whatsoever. She isn't trying to keep Caleb in there to me, and she isn't trying to let him out. It's almost as if he's not even a thought in her head.
She herself is so much bigger than a puny human.
Which I guess makes her more, does make her human, is how selfish she was to only care about the one thing she wanted, which was to escape.
The thing that I'm having trouble with is that the movie is so well thought out, and I think they throughout the whole movie they put in place that this happens for this happens for this. They say something and there's a payoff somewhere afterwards, and I think the movie is so well written. I mean, it was nominated for best original screenplay for the Academy Awards in 2016. I think the writing is so good, and you get to these points in the writing that you think, okay, well, do we overlook this, or do we really take this thing that someone said like on face value, and that's why this happens, and et cetera, et cetera.
Right. Because you could look at, how did the helicopter pilot take her away from there at the end of the movie? He was expecting Caleb, but at the same time, if she's able to manipulate Caleb into falling in love with her, I'm pretty sure she can manipulate a helicopter pilot into thinking, no, I'm the person you should be picking up right now.
Yeah, I'm just this cute little girl that's stuck on this island. Please, sir, help me. It's
I
not
don't
an
think,
island, but
yeah, I don't think Alaska's an island.
it wasn't. Okay, whatever. It
The
was a
internet,
vast of nature.
the internet says Alaska.
Okay,
So
well, I think it did not say in the movie, and therefore it is an undetermined place.
they don't show Ava go to the bathroom. Do you think that robots go to the bathroom the way Nathan created them?
Well, they didn't show Nathan go to the bathroom, so
And the way that knife went inside of him. So you're on my robot theory?
no, not at
Okay.
all.
Would you watch it again?
I watched it twice for this recording, and usually I don't like to watch a movie twice, but I really liked watching this for the second time, especially because you do pick up on a bunch of things that you might have missed the first time. I would also venture to say that I would watch it a third time
Yeah,
movie
I don't want you
again.
to have to make that type of commitment. So I think
I,
this is
I
the
don't I don't know, man.
I think this is the type of movie that I watched this last year, and watching it again a couple days ago, I still had those same feelings of when you see Caleb locked in that room at the end, banging on the door, the helplessness, in his eyes. I think this is the type of movie that I would watch, every few years, and I would still enjoy it almost as much as the first time I saw it. So it's a really excellent movie.
Well, thanks for listening to our first episode of I Finally Watched Ex Machina. I'm Alon,
This is David.
and we're signing off.